Yeah, so there are 7 images altogether at the exhibition. And the reason there are 7 images is partly it was to do with time. I only had a limited time to finish them. But also because when I did that second image of Seldafjord, it was largely to do with the reminiscence of my mum. And the fact that she is one of 7 siblings. She and her brothers and sisters, are 7 of them altogether. And I represented each of the 7 of them in that particular print. The 7 oyster catchers who are flying over the fjord. And quite deliberately, 3 of them were in the shade of the reflected mountain because 3 of them have passed away. But to me, Faroe is largely, or has been largely, about the family stories I've heard from my mum. I mean, I hadn't been here for 30 years until I came back in April. So my sense of my own Faroese heritage is largely filtered through the stories that I've heard through my mum and through her brother and through my grandfather. So to actually come here is nice because I'm kind of revisiting it and in a way owning a sense of Faroe for myself, rather than at one remove. So yeah, we were looking at this one image here, and in a way this is like me mythologizing the family story. It's like a creation myth in a way. The first element was that my grandmother's first husband drowned off south of Iceland with much of the population of Seldafjord. The men drowned in that incident. So that was the beginning of the kind of creation myth, because if he hadn't drowned, then she wouldn't be alive and I wouldn't be alive, because this man here, John Johannesson, he wouldn't have arrived and fallen in love with my grandmother, and they then had 4 additional children together. So it's a kind of, it's creating a story out of these things that actually happen, these very harsh realities that happen, and these chance meetings as well. It takes a long time, each of them, because there's the whole process of getting the photographs or the images and being clear what I want to convey in that image. So then I draw it in the size that it's going to be. So in this case, it's 60 by 40 centimeters. I draw it in some detail, and then I reverse it, I flip it, because of course it's a mirror image that you actually work on the lino. So I reverse it, and then I work in all the details. I draw in all the details on the lino, and then the cutting process starts, which is always slightly nerve-wracking in a way, because once you make a line, that's it. You can't take the line back. That's it. There's a sense of commitment to it, especially as this is something that you reproduce maybe 35 times. So you can't forever correct on each of the prints. It's much better that each print is as good as it can be, and everyone is a reproduction of that first image. That's the beauty of it, is that you go through the process once. So you have the lino block that you cut once, and from that lino you can print 35 pictures. And the process itself of printing is laborious. It takes a long time. So what I have is I have the lino block, put it down on a table, and then you have the roller with the ink, and you'll ink very carefully right over the whole of the lino, then lay a sheet of paper over that. And then what I take is a spoon, just a normal dessert spoon, and I'll rub it, a bit like brass rubbing. I'll just rub it and rub it and rub it. And it takes an hour just to burnish and rub until you peel off the paper, and then you reveal the actual printed image on the paper. I mean, my arms are still sore, in preparation for the exhibition. So it's a very long process, but it's a magical process, because you never know until you pull the image off. You never know what it's going to look like. You've been working in a mirror, in a sense, and also you can't really see on the lino what it's going to look like. So it's only when it's in the black ink on the white paper that you have a sense of what the picture is going to look like. What inspires me? Gosh, that's a tricky question, isn't it? I really want to communicate with other people. I really want people to look at one of my images and to think, I can really get that, or I hadn't looked at it in that way before, or this is an incredible perspective and something that I hadn't quite envisaged before. So narrative is really important. I mean, this is one thing, is that I am not one of these people who can tell stories, who can stand and give a talk or tell an anecdote about something, or as my mother can, to recount the story of her family. But I do like to connect with people. So this is a way I find, this inspires me, is actually, so seeing something that I find special and saying to someone through my pictures, look at that. Did you know that it looked like that? You know, so it's a way of giving people my viewpoint on what I find really interesting about the world, I suppose. And I suppose there's something optimistic. I do like to convey things that give a sense of humanity and optimism. Well, one thing is that Faroe lends itself to this medium very much. The houses, the geometry of the houses, the windows also, the geometry of the windows, and the old traditional houses being black and white largely, they really work well in this particular medium. So that, I think that was the idea. But it was, as is often the case, a project begins with one little idea, doesn't it? And then it develops and it develops arms and legs, doesn't it? And it becomes something. And so it started with that germ of an idea. It started with Vivian, in fact, saying to me, here's a sepia photograph of Bringsnagutta from 100 years ago. Could you turn it into a lino print? So it just developed from there, really. But Faroe is such a colourful place. It's odd to be doing a series in the black and white because it's so green, it's so blue, the houses are so colourful, and I'm very aware of such fine Faroese artists. I grew up with the images of Ruth Smith and various other Faroese artists, and the colours that they use in their paintings are just extraordinary. So it's quite weird to do a whole series in black and white. But it's a medium that I'm comfortable with. You know, I like the medium.
What's your relationship to the Faroe Islands?
I don't really have much of a relationship with the Faroe Islands, not in the way that my brother has. We, 4 boys, we grew up in a house where our father is Scottish. He's from Bannockburn, so Bannockburn is very iconically Scottish. So he's from Scotland, and my mother, of course, is from the Faroe Islands, and she left Faroe when she was 10 and her family moved to Aberdeen, but the Faroe Islands never left her at all. Her heart is very much still in the Faroe Islands, and that's true of her family, who then moved to Aberdeen. They strongly felt a strong connection with the Faroes, and so when we were being brought up, this was very important to us. It was a part of our identity as Scots. Nonetheless, there was this Faroese element as well. And I suppose I could have done what my brother did. In fact, 2 of my brothers did. I could have, after school, I could have got a job up here, maybe worked in a fish factory. But I didn't. So I didn't take the opportunities that I might have had to actually reconnect with the Faroes in that way. So I just explored what it was. I just got on with my life. I stayed in Scotland, so a lot of the connections I have are based in Scotland. Graham, my brother, got married 30 years ago, so the whole family came up for the wedding. It was during Aulasukka as well, so I had a strong sense of what it can be like in the Faroes. And then nothing for 30 years. I mean, I got married, I had small kids, so my life, of course, was very much based down in the Scottish borders and Edinburgh. And it wasn't until Graham said, because I play the guitar as well, he said, Neil, I'd love you to play a house concert in this house, and I'm going to invite all my friends. Graham has lots of musical friends in the Faroes. He used to play in a band called Chadner many, many years ago with Carl Martin Samuelsson. So Carl Martin was here, and Eyun Nelsøy was here, and all these people to hear me play the guitar. And other people played as well, really, really well. It was a lovely occasion. So that was my first time in the Faroes for 30 years, was to come up then. So yeah, I haven't really identified strongly with that part of, a very rich part of my heritage. While my brother Graham has. He's embraced it. His Faroese is perfect. His wife is Faroese. So he's re-embedded in Faroese culture to a large extent. And me coming up with my mother is a wonderful thing because she's showing me the places that she used to live. And my having an exhibition is my own way of connecting with the Faroes that isn't necessarily about visiting relatives and having coffee and cake with relatives, but it's my own kind of ownership of the experience of the Faroese side to my heritage. So it's a new rekindling of a relationship with the Faroes, I think.